What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I'm Connor O'Gara. Well, we're a little early this week with our travel schedules. Nobody's ever hated on early pod drop, right? Like the late pod drops, people don't like, especially if you don't communicate that. But no one ever in the history of podcast listening has said, "Whoa, my feed, it's a little bloated right now. I got too many things in the queue that hit earlier than I expected. I can't handle any more content." We're good for an early pod drop, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people love the schedule. I know you love a schedule, but people love a treat a little bit more, right? Give them a little bit of something they like, looking forward to the week. So I like it.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. We have a loaded show today. Great pod lined up. All Bang the Drum team today. Did this later than I usually do it, and I don't think it was directly because of the post-spring window, but I think I did it too early in some years, and I wanted to account for that, so maybe I just subconsciously delayed it a little bit longer than I typically would have, expected to get going into a given offseason. But we've got that, plus Wake Forest coach Jake Dickert is going to join us, and then Lad of the Week. But as we've been doing for the last, 2-3 months now, got to talk to you about our friends at Dabble. NBA playoffs, of course, in full swing. Is it going to go 7? TBD. Maybe you're one of these people that wants to be able to have something on the line, even in a blowout, which could be very much in the works in Game 6. We'll wait and see how that plays out. But if you're looking for a place to be able to get on the action, Dabble is going to hook you up. It is one of the newest and best apps in the DFS space, and they've wasted no time making a name for themselves. Dabble's social function is second to none, and they offer a wide variety of sports-making picks, including NBA playoffs and MLB. A lot of great stuff going on right now with Dabble and everything that they're doing. It's going to be awesome come football season as well. Use the promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that is promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. Will All Bang the Drum Team 2025 edition. Last year when we did this, I was wearing a Jason Kidd jersey. I realized Jason Kidd's son's jersey. Shout out. Best one in my closet, I think, not to brag. This year, we are keeping the same format, and I debated tinkering with it just because I wanted to dig into quarterbacks, and I felt like there were multiple guys from one team that I could bang the drum for. And then I was like, let's have some consistency. We're doing this the way that we've done it in the last couple of years, which is one player per team. No quarterbacks, because you don't really have to bang the drum for quarterbacks as much if you're good.
It's boring. Yeah, if you need more QB conversations, trust me, they're coming. Someone will talk to you. Please, someone talk to me about quarterbacks.
Yeah, if we don't talk enough quarterbacks on this show, I think you're maybe not listening closely enough. But those are two of the caveats. And then,
speaking of, our guest this week is teasing that he thinks a certain SEC quarterback is the best player in college football.
How about that? Follow Saturday Down South on Instagram, and you'll get little teasers like that.
There you go.
Maybe a certain former quarterback that he coached who's now coming to the SEC that we've had some mixed opinions on this offseason. Yeah, people will know by now who exactly I'm talking about. But we will have – so on this All Bang the Drum team, we will not have any first-team All-SEC picks from last year. Those guys, we don't need to say how great they are. You already know how great they are if they're coming back after first-team all-conference honors.
We've retired their jerseys in the All Bang the Drum team.
Yes, cannot be on it. And then also, no repeat selections. You can't be on this multiple times. I think I've avoided that at every turn, because if I've banged the drum for you once and I still need to bang the drum for you again, you're probably not doing the things that I hoped you would do.
Now
What's the point of that?
Player X Island. Now we're holding the stock. If we've waited 2 years for you to get it going.
Yes. Now, trust me, there are plenty of those guys where if I brought them up last year, a certain Luke has, and they've been on the All Bang the Drum team before, and they break out this year, and I'm sitting there going, I told you so. Look, just know that they would have been included in the All Bang the Drum team again, but certain things, I have to hold myself accountable to that. These are the guys I like. These are the guys that I think need to be getting more love in the preseason. They are worthy of your attention. They're the type of guys that if you're going up against them in a given week, your team is facing them, you need to be aware of who they are, because there's a very good chance they can make a game-changing play. Simple as that. Nothing crazy here. I'm not saying they're the best player on every single team or anything like that. I'm not saying they all deserve preseason All-America love. Not even saying they all deserve preseason first-team All-SEC love, but They should be in those conversations. And all of these guys, in my opinion, by season's end, could turn into all SEC guys. And that's why I highlight them here. We try and get out ahead of it. Last year, headliner of the team, Dylan Sampson, Will.
Mm-hmm.
How'd that go? Just
Pretty
saying.
fantastic, I'd say. Yeah.
So we're going to try and call our shot as much as possible. It is a bit breakout list-ish, but the guys that I'm sitting here in the preseason going, you know what? No, we need to be talking more about what this guy has done and what I think this guy is capable of doing this year. All of that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Let's start. We're going to just go in alphabetical order. Thought about doing reverse alphabetical order, but that's always difficult if it's Vandy to start, so we're not going to do that. Let's go in alphabetical order. Let's start with Alabama. Will, Bray Hubbard is my guy, the safety, who is not one of the top names that you're going to think of on this Alabama Kane Womack defense that you've been so unbelievably impressed with so far.
Of course, he yet to have any players scream at him this year, so that's a first for him at Alabama.
Malachi Moore is off to the NFL. So,
right.
Look, changing of the guard, and maybe a guy like Bray Hubbard will be one of the steadying forces. Wasn't a starter until midseason, and then down the stretch was just everywhere. 3 interceptions in his last 6 games. He only allowed 21 yards in coverage in that stretch. One of those guys that just good things happened when he was involved. 21.3 NFL quarterback rating when targeted in coverage. 6'2 defensive back. How can I say this? Out of the Adam Archuleta mold.
What does that
Gritty.
mean, Connor? Gritty. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, you could understand what I'm saying. But one of these guys that Alabama fans know how good he is. They know how good he became down the stretch. I always bring up how I didn't really think the Alabama defense was responsible for their shortcomings post Vandy. I thought they did a lot of things to keep them in some of those games. And Hubbard was a huge piece of that once he became a starter. One of these guys that very quickly won over that new coaching staff.
Absolutely. Sorry, I was trying to. Do you have your list from last year? Because I wanted to see how some of these guys have done.
So I didn't do a written form last year.
We did it in pod form. You're right.
And it was just in pod form. So if you're trying to go back and look at some of these things last year my selection was Jeremy Bernard for Alabama, coming over with that staff from Washington, who started his career off at Michigan State. Not a bad pick, but didn't turn into an all SEC guy. Was a little bit too invisible at my time for my liking at certain times last year. But it's kind of tough to be one of those guys for Bama, because all of these guys end up being really decorated. And more of them, as you know, can end up being overrated than underrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I love this pick for Bama because of Kane Womack's style, right? Where your DBs kind of tend to shine a little bit more because they have more responsibility. So I think it's a name we'll definitely be hearing a ton this year.
Arkansas. Omega Blake, the wide receiver. He had me at O apostrophe. No, not really. It is an all-name team selection. It really is. The name might sound a little bit familiar. He started his career off at South Carolina. He transferred to Charlotte. He was number 2 in FBS last year with 24.8 yards per catch. Number 3 in FBS with 8 catches of 40 yards. Taylor Green needs somebody that can get downfield and get open. Just be one of these guys that if he's extending the play, a defensive back is not going to want to have to defend him for 5-6 seconds. You're going to turn around and be like, how did that guy get free downfield? There are, I think, some Matt Landers vibes to him, somebody who came over. I think he was at Toledo after he started his career off at Georgia, and was that downfield threat that KJ Jefferson needed for a lot of similar reasons when he was slinging it in 2022, and at a time when the Arkansas offense was better and more fun to be able to watch during the KJ Jefferson era at Arkansas. He had that type of a presence. This is going to be a field stretcher. He's not going to be what Andrew Armstrong was necessarily, a guy who was incredibly underrated by season's end last year. But I think he can be something that Arkansas really needs. And a team that you look at the depth chart right now and you're like, man, they're lacking those proven playmakers. They just are. They need a guy like Omega Blake, who's already seen the SEC, to step in and look the part day one.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, this is a guy who I remember, like, I love a good name, bro. And I've been, like, kind of seeing this guy's name around, but watching him kind of go all the way around the world back to Arkansas and kind of fit with one of my favorite players, Taylor Green, right? When you look at the yards per reception average, This is exactly, it's just giving him and Bobby Petrino more knives, right? Which is exactly what you don't want to give them because they'll take shots. That's the thing about Taylor Green, a very Omega Blake down there somewhere type of player, which is going to be really fun.
Yeah, and look, I think Taylor Green ideally would limit some of that.
I
Those
know.
are
I hope he does that every other play. I
the
will
four
watch your
look.
football. That's what I want to see. Give me a pick or a tutty. Let's go.
You're right. Who am I to put a harness on the four local quarterback?
Exactly. Come on now. No diet
Yeah.
for Loco in this building.
They never made Four Loco Zero, did they?
Exactly. Yeah. What's the point? You're already starting Taylor Green. You hired Bobby Petrino. Chuck that thing.
I can't tell you how little Zero Loco would sell, but it would not be popular.
I'm terrified of the market of Zero Loco, actually. I think there are some functional adults who would drink some Zero Loco, and that really scares. I'm glad they didn't make that, actually.
The FDA would never approve all the artificial sweeteners needed for Zero Loco. Let's just say that. They were more okay with Four Loco than Zero Loco.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn. Jay Crawford, not the guy who was on Cold Pizza and was a staple on ESPN. One of those guys that maybe if you don't know the name, you'd Google it, go, oh yeah, that's Jay Crawford. No, different Jay Crawford. I'm cheating a little bit here, and I'm trying to do this a little bit more this year with guys who are second year players who I just think as true freshmen, what they did, it needs to be shouted out. And I think by season's end, we'll be talking about a lot of these guys as all SEC players. And Crawford really fits that description. You know, I have a certain level of respect for corners that can come into the SEC and look the part, playing on the outside. When there is no bigger target on your back in the SEC than being an outside corner, you get put on an island. You can just motion guys into you depending on what kind of scheme you're running and go try and take advantage of that, because that dude is 18, 19 years old. And I don't know if he's ready to defend grown men. Jay Crawford was ready to defend grown men. 437 of his 502 snaps were at outside corner. He allowed 13 catches on 32 targets in coverage last year. That's it. Had only one game of allowing more than 10 yak yards, which that's about yards after catch. Just need to say that at the top. And only if you can move past the A&M 4 overtime marathon game that he had last year, you'll see those were the only 2 touchdowns that he allowed in coverage all of last year. That's for somebody that came in sub 6 foot, wasn't necessarily that decorated as a recruit. But last year, you know, there was this expectation Auburn was going to have to rely on a lot of true freshmen. And you kind of take your licks with that in hopes that it's going to set up better things in year 3. And while it certainly didn't yield the record that Auburn was hoping for, this was a defense that was better than it got credit for. And a guy like Crawford, who's going to come in with all that starting experience in year 2, I just think he's got tons and tons of potential to be that lockdown number 1 corner that Auburn needs.
Yeah, like you were talking about his size, and that was something I liked about Omega Blake, and I kind of like went to go see his scouting profile. This is a rare guy that was listed a flat 6 foot 180 in high school, and now that they officially measured him as 5'11", 179, that's how you know he's got that dog in him. He's been played outside of himself this whole time. So yeah, it's kind of funny that you bring up the A&M game, because I would say that is most people's kind of experience with him. But at the end of the day, like, you can't just play corner in the SEC as a freshman and not kind of survive out there. Like, you get taken off the field because you get embarrassed very quickly. I know we've all seen that corner that gets on the field for our team. So yeah, you kind of have to grade him on a scale based on where Auburn was, but I think there's definitely a bright future there given those reps.
Even Derek Stingley had that bad game his freshman year against Alabama. That's what everybody liked to bring up all the time. The Devontae Smith getting burned when he's looking over at the sideline. You're going to have one. You're going to have a game where, you know what, you just tip your cap and a guy's going to get you if you're a true freshman in this conference. So I won't hold that against him. But look, DJ Durkin, his unit outperformed what I thought was capable, what it was capable of. I said, like, I don't think it's worth it for Hugh Freeze to hire somebody like that who's like maybe a middle of the pack SEC defensive coordinator, and they're looking at that unit as a true strength. And if they're going to get to that 8-win mark, it's going to be because guys like Crawford are stepping in as year 2 starters and really looking the part. Florida. I won't repeat myself too much. You probably already know where I'm going with this one, but Trey Wilson. Wilson, the wide receiver, aka Eugene Wilson. I drafted this guy number 1 in our comeback draft. Go listen to that if you haven't listened to that. But I just think that if he can stay healthy, he's going to be so special with DJ Lagway. The fact that he is able to line up all over the place is going to be really beneficial for a schemer in Billy Napier that needs versatility and he
Mm-hmm.
needs to avoid being predictable. Wilson is going to give him that element. And look, I don't throw this around lightly, Will, especially at you. Some 2023 Malik Neighbors type vibes is on the table for Trey Wilson.
Huh.
It is on the table with how interchangeable he can be used, with how reliable he is as a guy that just doesn't drop passes, which was something Malik Neighbors worked through over the course of his career. By the time he was in his pre-draft season, you're like, this dude dealt with drops? When? I don't even remember
I
that.
think he actually still had about 8 last year. He's just so good as a wide receiver that people forget that. But yeah, I mean, and the thing that makes me kind of hesitant about that is just the consistency of quarterback play. Like, I like Lagway a lot. I had somebody ask me, like, via the Instagram comments, like, what's Lagway good at? It's like, you haven't watched ball if you haven't immediately seen what Lagway is good at. But, kind of moving into that second season as a starter, I do think, like, the thing about Neighbors was the amount of receptions, just the volume. I don't think Lagway is necessarily ever going to be that guy. I think he's going to have a higher average, but I think he's going to take more shots. So I think we're going to see more speed out of him and kind of more highlight level plays. The thing about Neighbors is he was famous for the, third down, get down. He had a lot of big plays. Obviously, I'm not saying he was slow or anything, but he was like a very dependable safety blanket type guy. I think they'll have that same role, but I don't think the amount, just the volume will be there for him.
I think his floor is so high if he stays healthy, though. I really do, because 80 catches on 97 targets in his career without a drop. Good so far. Limited sample size with what he's been able to do with Lagway, but I just think his skill set fits it so well. He's not going to be a contested catch guy. He's not going to be, burning you 30, 40 yards downfield or anything like that. But trusting a guy that is comfortable making plays over the middle, trusting that you have a quarterback that can layer throws, that can fit it in tight windows with zip on it, and that could just be where you need him to be. That is Trey Wilson. Like that, when he is at his best, that is what he's capable of doing. So again, not saying that it's going to match that exact type of production. I do think that he is capable of having that type of presence, though, in this offense where there could be times he feels unguardable and it feels like the defense has no solution whatsoever. Lagway's looking at every single pre-snap alignment and going, yep, I know my guy is going to win that battle one-on-one. I know exactly where I need to put it. That's going to take time. That might not be there early in the season, but by season's end, I definitely expect it could be.
Yep, and that's why I make the point about statistically, because I think role-wise, I think you're right there. I just think that, by the end of the year, people might go, this guy compared him to Neighbors. It's like, well, yeah, but if you look at the offenses, this is what he did.
Yes. Within the offense, that's probably more the context. He will not be the guy that I think we say he should have won the Biletnikoff Award, but and how he's going to be used, I think that's all very much on the table. Georgia, Josh McCray, the running back coming over from Illinois. A Brett Bielema coach running back.
Here we go. The Big Ten numbers at it again. We got the branches coming in. We're talking about this guy from Illinois.
Look, I'm just saying, 235 pounds. He's 23 years old. Double-digit touchdowns in the Big Ten last year. Dry finisher.
235 pounds?
235 pounds.
You have my attention.
Big boy. Really nice compliment for Nate Frazier. And if you think about the Georgia running backs throughout the 2020s, I mean, really, you could even go back post Michelle, post Chubb, of what Kirby Smart has tried to be, the backfields that he has tried to that sort of volume, 1-2 punch, even going 3 deep sometimes. He has not been a feature back guy. So when Georgia goes into the portal post-spring and gets someone like McCray, who would have been in a timeshare at Illinois with their backfield options as well, so it's not like he was going, Quinshon Judkins leaving Ole Miss and going to Ohio State. This isn't anything like that. But getting a guy like him is really important if you're trying to win a title. It just is. You need a guy like that can get you short yardage, that can finish drives for you, that has already shown, by the way, that he can do it against SEC competition. Go ask South Carolina fans what it was like to see that guy, barreling for more yards. He was the MVP in that Citrus Bowl. He parlays it into this opportunity with Georgia. And I'm just looking at him going, I think he can be a huge, huge presence in this Georgia offense, which needs to get back to that physicality up front. They kind of lacked that last year. They didn't really have a guy that could be considered a bruiser. And I think that McCray coming over from Illinois was a really savvy post-spring move. And even though there are Georgia fans saying Nate Frazier's next, he's the next great one, I'm kind of dialing it back, my expectations of him, because I think McCray is coming over to have a true presence with this team.
This is a guy I don't think I was this in on Taylor Green when I first saw him. This is a guy, Connor, man. So obviously, I've been going through like 24/7 Sports to like look at where guys have been because a lot of guys are in the portal, right? You look at him at Enterprise, Alabama. This is a gentleman. This is a true unit through and through. Okay, we're talking about a guy who was number 1,400 overall as a recruit. He was 210 coming out of high school. This gentleman has put on 30 pounds since then. This gentleman, in his high school picture, has a bow tie and a Jesus piece wearing all black. I love this guy. He's got a nice little jolly round face. He would run you over in a heartbeat. This is my exact type of running back. He looks like modern Ron Dane. I'm so excited. Again, now he's not going to like win the starting job or anything. I'm not telling you he's going to take over Frazier's role, but every time this guy gets the ball, I'm going to be watching because this is exactly what Georgia was lacking last year. Like it's the rare guy who could be as fun as he is kind of quirky, where it's like, actually you could like, part of why Georgia struggled last year, you would talk about so many things over the pass game, but they just couldn't get that 4 yards that was so automatic for them kind of throughout the Kirby era, where it's like, we'll just hand it to one of these huge backs. We'll just kind of fall forward. They couldn't really do that last year with ETN. He was a good player, obviously, and you could kind of see they saved him throughout the year for like this the championship game where they ended up needing to do that. But this is the exact type of guy that like it's third and short. The defense has got their hands on their hips. They look up and they're like, oh my God, what is this Goron from Zelda that they just put in here? It's about to run me over.
Bring him in pass pro. Let him just try and take on some of these edge rushers because he's got the size to do that. I wouldn't want Nate Frazier doing that as much, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't think he's really built kind of for that role just yet. And he can have that type of missing role in that backfield. I mean, that's just not something they've had a lot of in recent memory. And some of that is because of injuries, and they've had some big boys in that backfield. Not being able to stay healthy, though, has been something that's been costly, I think, for Georgia. And, this is a team that hasn't had a guy with 200 carries in a season since Nick Chubb. Think about that. And it's why I always say, Kirby likes to divvy it up a little bit. He likes having, those multiple guys, even, Zamir White and having James Cook, that rotation. And it's McIntosh, it's Edwards. It's you need that staple of backs. And I think with the type of offense that they'd like to be able to run with Gunnar Stockton, you're going to see McCray step up. And he's going to be one of those, I'm glad I called that guy, post-spring guys, if Georgia is going to at least get back to a semifinal after 2 years away from it.
Connor, you talk about Nick Chubb. I'm not comparing these guys certainly athletically or as football players, but that Nick Chubb is about the biggest looking running back I've seen. That guy is 10 pounds lighter than McCray. This is a unit. I'm so excited to watch this guy play.
Weight distribution's a big thing, though. Yes, how much of Nick Chubb is it just the quads alone?
Oh, yes. I mean, I'm looking at Illinois pictures of McCray where he's fully just sweating through this blue jersey. Every picture of him in this blue jersey, or whatever they call this in Illinois, this color, he is just profusely sweating through it. I love this guy so much.
Maybe save him for when the weather's getting a little bit colder.
Oh, yes.
He's going to be that guy for you. Kentucky. This is tough because there's not a lot of guys on this roster that I look at and go, man, that's somebody that's got all SEC potential. That's somebody that I think fans will really grow to like. But Joshua Braun is coming over from Arkansas as a multi-year starter. He started off at Florida. He's at his third SEC school. Don't call him Zach Calzada, but
World
maybe
Tour.
A little bit.
Get a lot of free gear. That's what they don't talk about. You get a whole closet full of free gear if you do it that way.
I wonder if he's a tattoo guy. If he's gotten a tattoo of every one of his SEC schools, just get an SEC logo, man. Just
there you go. Yeah,
take our advice. Yeah, like Javi Baez with the MLB tattoo. Just get that. That's
safe. Going to end up with so many cover-ups by the end of his career, dude.
Right. This is somebody who's 342 pounds, who has spent the last 3 years with Sam Pittman, last 2 years with Sam Pittman, last several years with Sam Pittman, 32 career starts as an SEC offensive lineman. And I think that there's definitely a possibility that the big blue wall is not the big blue gate this year with how experienced, how old they are on the offensive line. That was something that Mark Stoops successfully executed this offseason. We'll wait and see if that yields a unit that can actually push people around in the SEC, because Lord knows they didn't do enough of that last year. But he's only allowed 3 quarterback hits on 891 pass blocking snaps at Arkansas. Those are the last 2 seasons. If you're going to be blue collar, if you're going to kind of get back to your 2010s offensive ways, at least from a an identity standpoint, you need old dudes like this on your offensive line. You just do. Kentucky, when it has been able to run the football successfully, they just had a bunch of big old dudes up front. And maybe that's going to allow them to kind of get back to some of this ground and pound identity that just has been lacking in recent memory.
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel like this is audience of one because, again, I love a big jolly guy. This dude apparently is an MBA from Arkansas, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, he just seems like a jolly dude that has lots of love, a lot of leadership. And to your point, like if Stoops can kind of step one for Stoops is exactly what you talked about. Like, hey, the walls are kind of let's not say the walls are falling down yet, but we talked about last pod. You can go review that if you want our full take on Kentucky. But let's say that the press hasn't been great for Kentucky. This is the exact type of like Mark Stoops, like, okay, it's got to reset the deck. Let's get everything going. I know that move hasn't happened since any of the news, but in terms of how he wants to build a football team, need a lot of dudes like this.
Don't look at the skill player depth chart right now. Mm-hmm. It's going to be wait and see for that. Wait and see, but build from within. That seems like more of the Kentucky way. LSU. I don't know how much I need to bang the drum for this guy yet, so I'm just getting out ahead of it. And I've just realized the more I've talked about in the offseason, the more I love him. But Aaron Anderson, the speedy, dynamic, fellow 5'8" wide receiver.
That man's 5'8" heels. You would tower over Aaron Anderson, dog.
I'm hoping he gets the SEC Media Days just so I can do the Connor look him in the eye test. Are you even 5'8"?
Saban. It's like one of my favorite things. Saban is fully looking down on him on the field. He has cleats on. And I'm like, wow, this guy is even better than I thought. How are you on the field right now?
Well, maybe you'd have an answer for this. I was struggling to come up with a comp for Aaron Anderson, for who he's been at this stage of his career at that size, because the body of work in the role is Luther Burden-like, what he's been able to do so far. And I'm not saying that he's like exactly where Burden was at in 23 when he was just unstoppable before he got hurt kind of midseason, before he got hurt against Kentucky. But I just think he's a bully, an absolute bully. And Bama fans having to watch this guy, even though, yes, I understand Bama won that game last year, but Bama having to watch that dude and what he's become so far in his career, that's a tough pill to swallow because he had at least 60 receiving yards in 9 games last year and was the consistent, steady force that Bama really lacked in the passing game, because when you're wide receiver one as a 17-year-old, not sure if you heard that about Ryan Williams, but sometimes those ebbs and flows are there. And when Jalen Milroe struggled the way that he did, I thought he could have used a guy like Aaron Anderson. Instead, Garrett Nussmeier used him and used him a lot. He had 20 missed tackles forced last year, which is 4th among SEC wide receivers. And he had 10 catches on throws that traveled at least 20 yards downfield. That was tied for 3rd in the SEC. The only SEC receivers I have better than him coming into the year, Ryan Williams, Cam Coleman. That's the list. If Aaron Anderson doesn't start off as a guy at least getting some of that love for first team All SEC, he needs to be starting off at least second team All SEC in the preseason. I'll be very, very mad, and I will point to height shaming, and I'll say that we need to give 5'8" people more respect in this world.
So the answer to your question is Darren Sproles. I know that I have made so many irresponsible comps on this, but hear me out. Here's why. When he gets open and gets the ball in space, I find myself cavernously laughing because I feel like music playing in the background. The way he puts moves on guys and makes them look silly. And again, like he's small, he's super quick, and he's the type of player where you look at him and you're like, oh yeah, they're going to tackle him here. And then they just don't. And the way he gets to that place is almost always hilarious. I think preseason love, like, unfortunately, because of the amount of talent that LSU has added, I think he could be a guy who's a little bit disappointing this year. Because, like, I think Nick Anderson probably finishes if he stays healthy as the leading receiver on LSU, just because he has like a little bit more versatility there. But again, this guy's been doubted at every stage of his career. Started at Bama, obviously, and like then to your point, kind of did the little "How do you like me now" game there. So I definitely don't want to put a ceiling on our guy. It's crazy what he was able to do with. I mean, look at the guys LSU had last year. Lacey coming back. They brought in dude from Liberty that barely, CJ Daniels, that like was just not really consistent. So the way that Anderson was able to scoot up the depth chart last year, sure, he could do it again, you know?
I wonder how much of a selling point it was to have Anderson so established when they very quickly attacked the portal to get Nick Anderson, to get Barryon Brown.
Mm-hmm.
2 guys that have played predominantly on the outside in their careers, and knowing you've got someone like Anderson that he's going to take care of the slot work. That's what 90% of his snaps. He's going to take care of that. you don't necessarily need to be like, hey, well, let's go after this guy who he's a little bit more interchangeable. No, go and get you some guys that can burn on the outside. Get you
Mm-hmm.
some guys that can make those downfield plays, make those explosive plays, because he's kind of a glue guy on steroids. And I hate throwing that around because it gets thrown around a little bit too much for the slot receivers. But man, another year working with Nussmeier. I love so many of the slot receivers in the SEC. Everybody's going to talk about how good the quarterback position is in the SEC coming back this year. I think slot receivers even better. And there's a couple more guys that we'll get to in a bit here that I just think will be dominating the headlines, could lead the conference in catches and yards and all that stuff. And you're going to look at them and go, dude, you're not even 6 feet tall. You're a $175 soaking wet. What? How's this happening? But times have changed. And I realize I'm saying this knowing how good Ryan Williams and how good I expect Cam Coleman to be as well. Both of those guys a little bit more physically imposing than some of the guys that we're bringing up today, but got a lot of love for the slot in the SEC this year.
Absolutely, and I do want to shout really quick if for my version of this exercise, I definitely say DJ Pickett. I think he is a guy that has been blessed by Corey Raymond and that DBU kind of mold. LSU, as we talked about, brought in a lot of transfer portal DBs, and the way that this freshman came in and just allegedly smoked all of them in practice. This is the biggest corner I've ever seen in my life. He's like 6'4".
Like 6'4"?
He's so, dude. I saw a video of him where they do like the fun like behind the scenes stuff. This guy was like crowding the camera in a way that made him look like some type of an anime villain. Like they cut to him and he was just staring at the camera. And I was like, "You're 18. Why are you playing? What is wrong? What is going on here? This is some type of a duende from like folklore that's on my team." So pretty excited about seeing both like, big and tiny on the same team. Very excited.
Ricks, Stingley, let's until we see it from DJ Pickett. Not necessarily part of those conversations, but the second that he starts to look the part, he will probably be in those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That's reality. Mississippi State, Devon Booth, the running back who I don't think the diehard SEC fan would realize this guy had more rushing yards last year than Caden Durham, Jaden Baugh, and Nate Frazier. Third among SEC returners in rushing yards last year. Very much slid under the radar because when you're a running back on a 2-10 team, you tend to slide under the radar. That's the way that this works.
Mm-hmm.
But last year, he finished 9th in the SEC with 457 yards after first contact. I like to bring up that stat because it kind of shows, are you scheme dependent? Are you not scheme dependent? How elusive are you? And didn't fumble once. Very difficult to do that. The former Utah State transfer who I think like just was totally off the radar within the SEC and ended up having one of the better seasons among SEC running backs, added 12.9 yards per catch as well. I think this offense would be smart to build around him. And I'm not saying that he's going to become some 20 carry per game type guy, but as this versatile, hey, let's get him touches no matter what, every down type back, I think they kind of need to. I think that Jeff Lebby got a hit in the transfer portal. And when you get a hit, take advantage of it as much as possible, even if it means you're not necessarily running the exact identity of your offense. You could still run enough of your identity of your offense with what he likes to do with his Baylor air raid type principles that he's going to have there, obviously, and build around Booth, man, because you need dudes when you're 2-10 and you haven't won an SEC game yet and Toledo's coming into your house and whoop it up on you. You need dudes. Booth, definitely a dude.
Yeah, definitely a dude. I'm sad that we broke up the presidents of him and Van Buren, but at like the same time, there was like that kind of. I'm trying to think about when we were exactly hopeful. It was kind of around like the Texas game where we saw that offense coming together, and yeah, I mean, I feel like when I like the games I watched them, obviously, like I said, Van Buren was interesting, but it really was kind of the rushing attack similar to Woody Marks in a way, where it was like I'm kind of here for this other thing. You feel like the stories you hear about the coach that go to like scout one guy and you end up watching another guy. It's like, huh. And so, yeah, I think that and another, like, we've kind of seen this over and over again. The teams in the SEC that are, let's call it rebuilding. If you go out and get a smaller school guy, they're so happy to be there. You get a lot of stats like that where it's like, guy never fumbled, showed up to work every day, super grateful. And I think that guys like that can be so key in rebuilding a program. So, yeah, I mean, hey, there's a lot of negative to say. You talked about the Toledo game, but I think it's definitely a hit and probably the most positive guy that, like in terms of expectation so far in the Lebby area.
Year 2 of the Lebby offense has been promising so far. Again, that's at places like Ole Miss and Oklahoma, which year 2 of the Oklahoma offense while he was there was the 10-win season.
Mm-hmm.
Year 2 at Ole Miss was peak Matt Corral 2021. Not saying that's on the table, but those teams ran the ball effectively, and they were able to do a lot more things on offense that they weren't necessarily able to do, at least not with a full arsenal year 1. Maybe Booth is a part of that year 2. Mizzou. Ahmad Hardy. So the other day, Ryan Brown on the next round asked he's just kind of put me on the spot. I was like, who's a guy nationally? Just we need to be talking about more. Just one of these guys that is not going to be part of these preseason conversations. And I'll bang the drum team of anyone in college football that I wanted to go with. And I thought about going in a few different directions. And I was like, I ended up also naming Sire Gaines, the Boise State running back, of course.
Our king, Sire Gaines.
But Ahmad Hardy was the first name that I thought of, because I really don't think people have grasped that there is another guy coming into Mizzou who could be Cody Schrader, could be Tyler Beatty, could be Larry Roundtree, just this guy in an Eli Drinkwitz offense that all of a sudden at the end of the year is leading the conference in rushing and is doing things that you just shouldn't be doing at that stage of his career. Because as a true freshman at Louisiana Monroe, where he's coming from, 1,351 yards. And this is my favorite Ahmad Hardy stat. And the reason why I feel like his skill set is going to translate really, really well to the SEC into Mizzou. The only 2 running backs who finished last season with more forced missed tackles, Ashton Genty, Cam Scattaboo. You've heard of him. 1,012 yards after first contact for this dude.
Yeah. You know, you said that because we kind of played this game, right, the couple of years we've been together, where it's like, who is this year's Larry Roundtree? Because it's a set it and forget it type of thing. Last year they didn't exactly find that, but man, what a stat! I mean, it's so rare that a team kind of leans on the back the way that Drink does. And so for people like us that are looking for who's leading rusher in the conference, who's like could kind of be a sleeper guy like this, but the difference between this year and last year, I mean, could just be that level of talent. Last year, they brought over the dude from Georgia State that kind of had a lot of miles on the tires. And this year, it's like, yeah, I think that when you have that type of production, it just feels like, you're at a small high school in Mississippi. You didn't maybe get the love you deserved. And whenever you get the chance to shine in college football like that, it's like maybe the recruiting services just missed this guy. There are plenty of guys like that.
Especially a running back, too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a little bit tougher. So much of it is dependent on your surroundings. And his surroundings in Mizzou are going to be really good. I mean, that should be one of the best offensive lines in the SEC, especially with what they return on the interior of that offensive line. A couple of guys in there that already have NFL draft type love early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that scheme it's going to be ground heavy. I think with Pribula, even if they get him stretching the field more, Kevin Coleman coming over. A lot of people don't realize Kevin Coleman coming over from Mississippi State has more receiving yards than any returning SEC player. Yeah, kind of a weird stat from last year. There's a good trivia question for you. But yeah, the identity of this offense will be ground heavy. I hope they get back to just 20 carry a game type guy. And Ahmad Hardy can definitely be that.
I mean, you could almost make the argument they tried to modernize last year and it didn't exactly work, right? Because they kind of got away from that. And granted, you have the leadership. You have senior quarterback. You have like the leadership in the wide receiver room that they had with Burton and that boy Weiss, right? So it was like, okay, we're going to throw the ball around. It makes sense, obviously. But like, it's not that it was all on the offense last year, but I think from a guy like Drink's standpoint, it's like, hey, we kind of already did that. We don't really have a reason to go try to be as pass happy and like, because that was the conversation in the last year. Is like, how are they going to use Luther Burden? How are they going to like kind of evolve from the previous year where they had such a great ground game? So I think it's get back to basics. This is a great place to start.
Oklahoma, Eli Bowen, the corner, the younger brother. Shout out little brothers everywhere. It's funny because I think if you looked at this without being obsessed with Oklahoma recruiting, you would think that Eli Bowen was a package deal with his brother. Peyton was the 5-star coming out. Peyton's a year older than Eli. Yes, Peyton and Eli. We have a Peyton and Eli in the SEC. I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. But what Eli Bowen did last year as a true freshman had a lot of people going, I think he's better than his brother. And he was the 3-star recruit who was kind of considered maybe a throw-in for a package deal, but not nearly as decorated. The what package?
The Kimdichie package. You remember that his brother had to come with him? That was a joke back then with Robert Kimdichie, where it was like, well, yeah, but my brother's got to come.
Look, I would do that too.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that my brother would do that for me. Although looking back on it, he was a college baseball player, and never mind, we don't need to go down that road. But just like how I talked about with Jake Crawford at Auburn, if you're stepping in as a true freshman outside corner in the SEC, you have so many opportunities to get exposed. And you can have that one bad game, which Eli Bowen did, the LSU game. LSU got him. LSU got him that game. 115 yards he allowed in coverage. Basically, like half of his coverage yards allowed last year were in that LSU game. He only allowed 72 yak yards all season. His best game, though, that Bama game.
I was about to say, I was like, well, you had the Bama game, though, which I think if you could pick it, you'd probably win the Bama game.
Yes, absolutely. That Bama game where he makes that pick, start of the second half after, I think it was 10-7 at the time. And Bama's trying to run this little bubble screen. It gets blown up by Bowen, those instincts on the outside. And it's a tip ball where he anticipates it and he makes it happen. And maybe he got a favorable bounce on it, but just an extraordinary play given the circumstances at that time. And you just see those instincts. That's hard to teach. That's really hard to teach. And so this year coming back with a lot of guys still on that defense. I know Stutzman's gone. I know Bowman's gone. And those were the two headliners last year. But Brent Venables is going to have a defense. He's going to have a defense. And they've really hit on a 3-star true freshman who probably wasn't coming in as anything more than, Peyton Bowen's little brother. And instead, people are like, man, I hope Peyton could be as good as Eli. What a sentence that is to say out loud. But yeah, I do think that he's going to have a really, really big presence and is going to be just that number one corner. 5'9" guy. Mm-hmm. So maybe he'll get to SEC Media Days and I'll be able to look him in the eye and be like, are you really 5'9"? We'll see.
Mm-hmm. But that could be our segment. We could be like, hey, height check.
Height check. How tall are you really? I would love that. That's a really good. File that one away. That one away. We need to do that at some point. But yeah, Bowen's going to be great.
You're making me aware that Oklahoma had 2 Bowens and a Bowden last year. Or Bowman, sorry. They had 2 Bowens and a Bowman. And that's why I was like, was it him or his brother that made that pick? So, yeah, I think that it's easy to, because to your point, yeah, they're like kind of a package deal. The other one was highly recruited. So, basically, what I'm saying here is pay specific attention to each of them because they are kind of different players. And I think that Oklahoma's defense has been obviously the strength of their team. And like, that's one thing that I think pretty much no matter what, right, we're going to trust Venables there. So yeah, he another comp here. He reminds me of Vic Fangio in the NFL where it's like, hey, as bad as his team's got, the defenses were awesome. So I think that no matter what, you're going to be watching a show on defense for Oklahoma. And I mean, they've gotten the recruiting down. They've been able to also get the diamonds in the rough like him. So yeah, I think there's lots of reason to be hopeful.
I realized the other day that if Venables goes out at Oklahoma, and again, the buyout's $35 million, but if he goes out with another really solid defense and it's 4 years and out, Will Muschamp Florida vibes.
A little bit.
Similar, where you're like, man, you had what at quarterback and you messed that up? You had this guy at quarterback and you messed this up. Have to win the Jackson Arnold breakup. Mm-hmm. Really, really important for Oklahoma.
They're pros at breakups now, though. They're like Taylor Swift.
Yeah, they've had some good ones. They've had some good ones, some less good ones, I would say, but just kind of depends on perspective. Ole Miss, Caden Lee. Told you we'd be talking more slot receivers. Mm-hmm. One of the safest bets, I think, if you're saying, what is something in the SEC that I can close my eyes and rely on this year? Caden Lee having huge numbers with Austin Simmons. Mm-hmm. That feels inevitable. Absolutely inevitable. He stepped into that wide receiver 1 role last year when Trey Harris went down. And I do think that they definitely missed Trey Harris. Some of the things that he did on the outside with his size, it's just tougher if you're 5'10", 5'11", like Caden Lee to be able to replicate. But he still finished with 874 receiving yards, which third among SEC receivers who are coming back this year. Kevin Coleman, Aaron Anderson, the only 2 guys ahead of him. But I just think that this is someone who established himself as the reliable go-to when all else fails, trust that I'm going to get open. Caught 79% of his targets last year without a single drop. Matthew Golden was the only SEC receiver who had more catches of 20 yards. Hit 20 catches of 20 yards. That scheme is going to yield it. No team in America, at least in the 2020s, feels like they have done a better job at scheming guys wide open downfield. wide open spaces. Shout out the chicks. This is just going to be an offense that's going to suit him really, really well. And Will, just in case you're not sold on him there, may or may not have, but definitely was working out with Jaden Daniels this offseason.
I mean, it's the best quarterback to work out with. Everybody wants to be on Jaden Daniels' team now, apparently. But yeah, man. I mean, you know what's crazy is like this is a guy who got the rare dress rehearsal to be a wide receiver one. Exactly to your point. Hate to talk about LSU some more, but boy, how did he crush LSU? I mean, I remember watching that game and being like, "Are you serious?" Like, I thought we had kind of hey, it was him and Ulysses too, and I was like, "Where did these guys come from?" I thought, So point being, I think that he being the guy kind of behind the guy doesn't take away from who you are as a player, right? We've kind of seen this over and over again where it's like, well, how come this guy wasn't the alpha in that room? It's like, no, dude, like Trey Harris, as we talked about last year, was a very, very special player who's, I think, going to go underrated kind of in SEC history. But that being said, it's also underrated because of how the record finished out, what Caden Lee did in his absence. Because you're right, the offense kind of starts to come apart as the season winds down. They definitely miss Trey Harris. But in the short term, it was like, this guy is like 80% of that, and that's all we need, right? And so with a full offseason, kind of, and the thing about like quarterbacks too is like quarterbacks will often kind of have their guy. That's their buddy. We've talked about this previously. And so point being, now that you have a new quarterback in who he's the face of the team, you're the face of the team, I think that the sky is the absolute limit. And I mean, he just felt unguardable against LSU. He was a guy who was always open downfield. Ole Miss is always going to have fun guys to watch. And it's kind of like Georgia's defense, but an offense where it's like, I can't wait to find out who those guys are. This one I know. It would be an absolute shocker if he wasn't awesome this year.
He and Austin Simmons, 2023 classmates, have spent a lot of time on the practice field together as well. I think it was Lee's first touchdown last year was when Simmons came in relief and made a big play downfield.
Against Furman.
Good old FU. Shout out Furman. The ceiling for him, in my opinion, 2020 Elijah Moore. A guy that probably a little bit underappreciated, maybe benefited from some COVID defenses, but just nobody could cover him. Nobody could cover him all year. I think he could definitely lead the SEC in catches and yards in 2025. I think that is on the table. One of the highest floor guys in the conference this year. South Carolina. You're going to like this one, Will. This is Justin Okoronkwo. Okay. I listened to him pronounce his name because he came to South Carolina by way of Alabama and Germany. That's right. This is someone who played high school club football, not actually high school football because that's not a thing they do in Munich. But this is someone who had a skill set that enough people were like, buddy, you can't be doing gymnastics and being a goalkeeper in soccer. You need to be playing American football, and we need to get you over here to the States. And don't you know it? He goes to a few camps. The State did a great story on him after his transfer from Alabama to South Carolina. But he comes over to the States, does a bunch of these camps, and tests unbelievably well. 24/7 Sports did their version of the Freaks List. And before he even played, like we've got intel that this guy at 6'3", 220, 225, had a 36.5-inch vertical with a 10-1 broad jump, which is just ridiculous. For a high school kid from Germany to be doing that. The question for him is going to be about, what's it going to look like getting football reps. He spent only a year at Alabama. He originally committed to Saban and then decides after a year, look, Justin Jefferson took advantage of the Diego Pavia rule, and then Deontay Lawson came back. He's like, I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play if I come back here. I need to get football reps if I want to get to the NFL. The exact type of guy that Bama could have taken a chance on in years past and then just waited for him until year 3 to be a starter, and you add depth. And he got to play a little bit last year too. But instead, he decides, why not try and play immediately in the SEC? I'll go to a place like South Carolina that's got a lot of turnover in the front 7 after all the dudes that they lost to the NFL. You need pieces behind Dylan Stewart if he's going to maximize his abilities. And let's just take a chance on a guy like him. I can't wait to see what he does. I cannot wait. I love the story, the unique background, and all that stuff. Going to be one of those guys that whenever he makes a play, you'll be like, hey, he's really football young. And they'll get into the story that the State told about, all the things that he was doing before he was actually playing, like regular American organized football. But just one of those guys that, who knows, maybe we'll look up a year, 2 years from now and say, man, he's doing what? And he's played how much of real American football in the States? Very, very impressive.
I want to say again, so glad that Nick Saban is gone because he's the exact type of guy that would just pop up several years from now.
Yes.
Saban had him like in some basement somewhere, just feeding him Milos. He's just getting massive. He's like from the upside down. He's speaking German at you on the field. You're like, I've never seen one of these. By the way, 2 players from Germany. So I didn't know that there was a all caps GERM tag on 24/7. There are actually 2 Germans from this class in the SEC. The other is a dude whose last name is the most unpronounceable last name I've ever seen in my life, but his first name is Noel, and he's on Florida. So apparently
there are a couple umlauts in there.
I don't even know where this name is from. There's an N in the middle of it with 4 consonants together. There's a lot going on. But anyway, so I didn't really know that like this pipeline was picking up in the way that it is, but it makes sense. I am so fascinated by a guy like this. And it's funny, man. This brings me to the other day I was looking up randomly how you become a fullback in the NFL because all these guys have like very different paths. And a lot of these guys are like weird international guys like this because they grew up playing rugby, playing different sports. And so I am fascinated now thinking about this of how, funny enough, I think Kane Wommack would actually be a pretty good coach for this guy because he uses kind of like a what would I call it? It's a stringent defense kind of from a coverage standpoint, but he gets creative with blitzes. And I don't know. I think that after a couple of years, to your point, football young, kind of get him in the system, get him around like standard SEC fare. I can't wait to see this guy interviewed and be part of the team. Yeah, this is a great one to know.
This is a guy that I can picture SEC Nation, early November. They take him to gymnastics at South Carolina, the gymnastics facility. And they have Jordan Rodgers try and shadow him and do, back handsprings and somersaults and all that different stuff. And maybe they won't want to do that as much because of, you don't want to have, your linebacker, one of your prize transfers getting hurt potentially, but they roll him out and just see all the things that he can do at that size with gymnastics. I don't know how much he's kept on it, but that's coming to an SEC Nation segment near you.
Yes, absolutely. And just one cleanup thing, since I was reading all about his backstory, everything was talking about Alabama. So obviously he's a transfer. Yep, good cleanup there.
He is more bullish on the South Carolina training staff than the Alabama training staff, which is something to file away. And that story that he had to the state, he talked about the differences between their strength programs and how what they were doing at South Carolina was a little bit more applicable than what they were doing at Bama. Just
interesting.
Something to keep in mind.
Media training 101, first class to take at the SEC, young man.
We'll see. Tennessee, Arion Carter, the linebacker. Will, we've kind of tried to map out what it would take for Tennessee to not have a regression this year. What it would take for Tennessee to just maybe, but that over-under at 8.5 wins, again, those odds haven't changed or anything like that. But what would it take for Tennessee to be in playoff contention in mid-November with a team that just seems like a tough out and is kind of in an us against the world type mindset? Arion Carter is the key to that.
Okay.
And I know we can talk about quarterback stuff all we want. Are they going to find a real replacement for Dylan Sampson? Can they get production in the passing game? All that stuff. But the alpha in that locker room is Carter. And he's going to be the guy that's going to hold them together when it's 14-10 and they're getting no contributions from the offense. And once again, you're going to have to keep those defensive guys from just banging their head into the bench going, what do we need to do to get some freaking help out here? That's what Carter is going to be able to provide because he's lived this the last 2 years. And that's unique compared to somebody that might have started off in the Heupel era is from 22, who was like, look, take that chance. Danico Slaughter, you want to go just all in on that interception or try and take this guy's head off? You have the freedom to do that. Go ahead. You got to play a little bit differently. This Tennessee team does. And I think they're going to find themselves in a lot of low-scoring games, which that's been the case the last 2 years. But what Carter established in year 2 in that Tim Banks defense was he is the heart and soul of it. He really is. 65 tackles, led the team in that for the number 7 scoring defense in college football. We've talked a lot how they're going to be without Jermod McCoy at the start of the year, potentially. He's coming off the torn ACL that he suffered while training in Texas in January. You need a veteran alpha on your defense like this. Not necessarily that's going to jump off the page and be one of these guys getting way too early first round draft love or anything like that, but just that middle linebacker that's going to be the glue. They're going to need that this year. I really do. And if it's going to be an us against the world type season for Tennessee, I think it's going to be because a guy like Carter steps up and becomes an all SEC type player.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, that defense has done nothing but make us trust them. I mean, like since
Yeah.
Heupel took over and Tim Banks, like it's so underrated. And we try to shine light on this where we talk about Texas with PK, Tennessee. These are teams that are often like spun as offensive teams. I would not say this about Ole Miss, by the way. They're often spun as offensive teams, but they're actually kind of defensive teams because the heart and soul of their teams are offense or are defense. And it's kind of funny because all of the headlines, same deal, have been on the offensive side of the ball. You kind of look around and you're like, what reason do I have to not trust Tim Banks? Actually, like every part of this, like year one, they kind of had, they had a transfer heavy team. So they're kind of top heavy, but every year they've been able to build has been pretty awesome. So yeah, I'm actually kind of, now that I think about it, kind of bullish on the Tennessee defense. And with that Heupel offense, hopefully they get back to running the ball, not trying to get off the field quickly as they did in the earlier years, as they did at UCF. Maybe this does just turn into a ground and pound team for the foreseeable future.
Carter had the big time interception against DJ Lagway in that game. Guy that needs to get better, continue to get better in coverage. He got better last year, but yeah, you're just going to have so many, I think, of these close games. And I don't know that the margins are great. The difference between Tennessee being at 6-6 versus Tennessee somehow getting to 10-2 again. I don't know that we're going to see there could be a very limited variance game to game with what that looks like. And there could be games in which we wonder, I don't know if they're going to finish with a winning record in SEC play. And then we look up and go, wait, they just won 3 in a row and they're all by one score. And I think that could be the identity of this team if they're maximizing their potential. Now watch, Josh Heupel's going to put up some top 6, top 7 offense in college football. And we're going to wonder why in the world did we doubt this offense? But for now, let's just assume moving forward, Tennessee's a defensive focused team, and it's because of guys like Carter.
Yeah.
Texas. Trevor Gooseby. Gosh, I'm going to really work on pronouncing his name right. Gooseby. TG, we call him. Trev for short. Last year, talked about this a lot. I don't think that it got enough love nationally when Kelvin Banks gets hurt. Your Kelvin Banks, by the way, here in New Orleans Saints Kelvin Banks, gets hurt in that A&M game. And this was someone who was a 3-year starter at left tackle, was heavily relied on to protect the blind side of Quinn Ewers, a banged up Quinn Ewers. And you're relying on a redshirt freshman in that game to step in, hostile atmosphere, really talented defensive line. And he kind of won me over. Gooseby didn't allow a single pressure in that game against A&M's defensive front. A game that we know came down to some big-time plays late, and Texas was able to hold on and clinch a berth to the SEC championship. And then he had some tougher moments filling in at right tackle for Cam Williams, both against Georgia and then in the college football playoff against Arizona State. And he, obviously, went through some growing pains, but he's going to be the blindside protector for Arch this year. And I'm trusting Kyle Flood. I think what Kyle Flood has done with that offensive line is remarkable stuff. It's set it and forget it type stuff with how reliable they have been so far during, I think, the early part of the Steve Sarkisian era, and finding guys like this who can step in and just be set it and forget it tackles is a huge part of that. Not a guy where you put him out there for 2 or 3 games and he looks overwhelmed. No, a guy that's going to rise to the occasion, a guy that is still getting better, I think, at this stage of his career. But I had him as one of my way too early future first round picks in the SEC. Like this time next year, I think he will be considered a first round pick. I think he's going to grow into that 6'7" frame. But I think he's just going to be getting a lot of eyeballs on him as Arch's blindside guy. And by the end of the year, we'll be talking about him as an obvious first team All SEC guy.
This is a case to me where like winning matters so much in how we tell the story, right? Because in my mind, okay, if you're still able to achieve the result, right? You talk about A&M and the deep playoff run against Arizona State, like that Texas had last year. And it's like, hey, the story of this Texas team so clearly could have been that they were injured, guys struggled, whatever, right? But when you're able to achieve the result, now that becomes a good rep, right? Because Gooseby was put into pretty much an unwinnable scenario, right? You're filling in for a guy who you can never truly replace. You're moving around the offensive line to replace really, really good players on a really good team that has lots of goals, but you didn't lose any games. You know what I'm saying? Like
He
you
didn't
lost.
allow a sack either, too.
You know what I'm saying? Like he
Yeah.
personally didn't lose any games. Like that's what I'm saying. Like he didn't have that moment where it's like this guy's in over his head. Exactly like what you said. I would have cut myself off there because like, well, they didn't win the championship. Good.
Cam Williams, who had the pressure allowed on that all important Jack Sawyer play too. Not to throw Cam Williams under the bus, but so it wasn't like he was out on an island in a scenario like that where Texas fans could look back and go, man, that guy wasn't ready for it. He really didn't have those types of moments, and that was huge. Texas doesn't get to the semifinal without a contribution like that.
That's exactly the moment I was talking about. And I was kind of circling it. Thank you for hitting right in the heart of that, where it's like, hey, you put a guy in like that, and he's not the reason why you lost, basically. And so, like, I think that being able to get guys quality reps in those moments is so massive. I mean, look at Arch, the exact same thing, right? Where it's like, hey, you got in, you had some of these flashy moments. We were able to manage the locker room. We didn't fall apart. Now the story going into next year is having all this great experience. Now suddenly Texas is seen as a place with great culture, which is crazy for the world that we've grown up in. And so, yeah, we have no reason to doubt this kid because he's had to prove it on a huge stage, and he hasn't pooped the bed, for lack of a better term.
4 or 5 new starters on that offensive line. Gooseby is considered a new starter, but there's a chance that we look up midseason and go, oh, I thought Texas was inexperienced on the offensive line. They certainly don't look the part.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Texas A&M. The guy that I should be talking about more, Reuben Owens. Reuben Owens, man. Last year in the South Carolina game, Le'Veon Moss, very much on his way to like a 1,200-yard type season for A&M, maximizing all of his potential, gets hit on the sideline and suffers that torn ACL. And it's just a brutal development for an A&M team that was already dealing with some backfield depth issues coming into the season because Reuben Owens got hurt their first scrimmage of fall camp. He goes down with a foot injury. And I'm not saying this is entirely to blame for A&M struggling down the stretch, but they needed more dudes in the backfield with the Colin Klein offense to be able to put up points and to be more consistent on that side of the ball. And so Owens this year, now after making a surprise late return from injury last year, came back for the Texas game and then played in the bowl game as well and looked good in the bowl game. This is someone who has a great opportunity, a tremendous opportunity. And Amari Daniels is still going to be involved as well there. But the Colin Klein offense returns 5 starters on that offensive line. That's good. Mobile quarterback. That's good. I think that Reuben Owens, what he did as a true freshman, went very much overlooked because it was 2023 and it was the last year of Jimbo Fisher. And, you know, is one of these guys that comes in as a 5-star who I think everybody just assumed that every 5-star that Jimbo recruited left. And so you kind of forget this guy is tremendously talented. Just as a true freshman, this is my favorite Reuben Owens stat, and why A&M fans were so excited to see this guy come back fully healthy and maybe get the lion's share of the work before Moss comes back. He forced 23 missed tackles on 101 carries. That is darn
That's
good.
real.
That is real. That is real as an 18-year-old true freshman to do that in this conference. I don't say that lightly. So maybe it allows them to be a little bit slower with the return. You don't have to rush Moss back. You can kind of say, like, look, we kind of got a good thing going. If you can return for us like mid-October or something like that, and we're still keeping our heads above water, we're staying in the top 25 and still got a shot at the playoff, maybe you can be a little bit more conservative. But Owens is a big part of that. And I think that if you're just assuming that A&M will take a step back with its ground game because of the Moss injury, because you lose a guy that would have been one of the top two returning backs in the SEC if you were healthy, I think you're overlooking Reuben Owens.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is why I felt this way at the time, right? But when Texas A&M kind of went on this run, I was like, guys, you did it. Season's kind of a success here. I really don't care about, the bowl game against USC or the Texas game or any of that stuff because our expectations are set preseason. So just because, we have a first-year head coach, to your point, the vibe was like all these 5-stars left, but we talked about it at the time. The amount of talent they had on this roster, you would have to lose everybody to not have any talent left in this roster. And so now I'm looking up, 5 returning offensive line starters. Okay, this is a dude who, we could talk about Moss, who is dynamic. And trust me, again, I know that as an LSU fan, that was a scary, scary player against LSU. But at the
Baton
same
Rouge
time,
native, by the way, a certain Le'Veon Moss.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this. That was the week that I taught my girl the phrase "you got mossed," and boy, have I never regretted something more. Anyway, so So point being, Ruben Owens, I mean, this is, again, number 2 running back in the country in his class, number 4 player or number 5 player in Texas in his class. This is just a guy they had sitting around. And to your point, you come in as a freshman, you're already forcing missed tackles. You're already doing more with your opportunities. So with a 5-star, it's very rare that we get a 5-star who like develops nicely into a 5-star. Either we see them at 18 and go, that's a grown man, or they kind of become a role player. Like, I feel like it's pretty rare to watch a guy just like, oh, okay, actually, you kind of did turn into what we thought after several years. You know what I'm saying? So, what's up?
I kind of wish I took Ruben Owens in our comeback draft because I'm realizing there are so many things I like about him that are similar to CJ Baxter. You know, and one of these post-hype type guys, Ruben Owens, maybe not quite as well. You know what? I would argue that he is just as proven as CJ Baxter. Like I would argue that that's a really similar conversation to have. If those two guys end up being the face of their offenses, I don't think it'd be stunning. And I'm mad at myself for overlooking the promise of Ruben Owens in the wake of the Le'Veon Moss injury.
Yeah, and I mean, they proved, that's the thing. The things I was looking for at A&M, they showed me so early. Like I said, I hate to say it, but I was like, pack it in. I don't care how bad you guys puke on your shoes. You're not going to convince me you're bad. I don't care how bad. Like, they could be at the poker table. They could be at the pool. They could be at the strip club or whatever. I don't care. Like, that was the whole vibe with them was like, well, let's find ways to poke holes in A&M. And it's like, no, dude. Colin Klein was every bit the horrifying play caller I was scared of. Because remember, we talked about he came in and got all the money, right? Because Oko was a defensive guy. He could kind of go pick his OC. And immediately you have quarterback controversy. They handled that incredibly well. They kind of like switch guys back and forth. It's like they had to go through 3 seasons in one. And during seeing that, I was like, okay, cool. So your 4th and 5th season didn't work out. Who cares? Like within the context of this one season, things changed so much for them and they had to adapt so many times. As a first-year coaching staff, Klein, as young as he is, don't need to remind ourselves of that one again. But like the way that they were able to adapt, and now they're gonna be able to actually start a season with something entrenched. Like I said, the offensive line starters stat is so key to me because I know they're gonna run the football. I just know they're gonna run the football. If they can't run the football, it will be the most shocking thing to me in the world. So yeah, I think this is as great of a pick. There's like some kind of cut above guys where I'm like, oh, like if this guy's really, really coming from this list, I think this is one.
Let's talk Vandy. Let's close it out, Will. A guy that I'm not going to have to sell you on once you hear this all-important detail about him. And it's not actually his name. CJ Hurd, the safety. Yes, you heard? CJ Hurd's nickname is Sea Snake.
Okay.
I need everybody at home to pull up CJ Hurd. I am not a House of the Dragon. Is it House of the Dragons or House of the Dragon?
Yeah, House of the Dragon.
I am not a House of the Dragon guy. I am told it is because he has blonde dreadlocks that are overflowing.
Oh, that's fire. Wow. Okay. Another good guy to know. Okay.
Sea Snake. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Wow.
Great nickname. I'll name team, maybe not so much. CJ Hurd, though, is a pretty good name. But Sea Snake is our guy. He is kind of going to fill that CJ Taylor role in Clark Lee's defense, and not just because his name is also CJ, but started off at FAU. And was really decorated coming out of high school, even as a 3-star recruit. Look at the offers that he had. He was committed to Florida State at one point, had seemingly every big-time offer, and ends up going to FAU, plays immediately, led the team with 82 tackles, 53 solo tackles as a true freshman, which just doesn't happen. I realize FAU was Basura with Tom Herman, but still, if you're doing that and you're showing that you're capable of playing at this level, that to me says at least something. And if you're Vandy, this is the exact type of guy that early on in the Clark Lee era, they weren't recruiting and they weren't getting. And it annoyed me because I don't know what they did. I don't know how many exceptions they've made from a grade standpoint. So I won't pretend to know if they did anything on the back end here. I'm just talking strictly about from a football standpoint of the type of guys that you need to be able to get and not trust that your development is working out. You need to go out and promise playing time and get these guys who are true freshmen. You're going to get them for multiple years. They've already logged significant reps at the FBS level. That's CJ Hurd. That is Sea Snake. That is what he was able to do and in 1 year in Boca. And now Clark Lee stepping into this role where he's now not going to be his own defensive coordinator. He's stepping back into more of the head coaching duties now that he's stabilized things. We'll see if that bites him in the butt, TBD. But you need guys like this that come in because I'm not trusting 3 and 4 years worth of development at Vandy just yet when you've yet to put a guy in the NFL draft. I'm sorry. Just not. Give me more proven guys. Give me more portal reliance. Even at a place like Vandy, wherein the portal is a trickier thing to navigate with the academic standards, go get guys like CJ Hurd. And that's what they were able to do. So it's more of a hat tip, not just to the nickname, but to the premise of how they're acquiring key contributors and what they need to be doing more of.
Yeah, Clark Lee and this Vandy team just feel like it's like they. I'm not gonna say they won't go away because I feel like everyone likes them, but it's like
They might go away. Well, they might. We'll see.
No, but you see what I'm saying? Like they just find a way to find these like weird players where you're just like, huh, okay. And so yeah, I'm with you. Like this guy's background is very interesting. To your point, 3-star, but decorated 3-star, had a lot of offers. Kind of interesting. He ended up here. And like this is the type of guy that Stoops probably would have had at one point in time that he doesn't really get as much anymore. And so yeah, this would be a Mark Stoops all-star, dude.
That's actually a really good point. Like a Chris Rodriguez type mold out of the state of Georgia.
Yep.
Who's a 3-star guy who like people are maybe just a little bit late on or something like that. And you have the ability to give them playing time early on in their career. And they see that as, really beneficial. That's actually a really good call.
Yeah, and I think that with a guy like this, you almost have to be prepared to lose him too. And that's why I think that for Clark Lee, this is such a great kind of putting your ego to the side move where it's like, hey, okay, this guy is going to work for us. And if he really works, he might end up at Alabama, right? Like we've seen. But we're gonna keep moving here because we know this guy is good. Like every guy who's watched him play football, every publication, every team is like, this guy's a baller. And so at a place like Vandy, to your point, hey, let's promise him playing time. Maybe we've been the academic stuff. We'll never know that stuff because we're a private institution, famously. But point being, like, you have to do what you got to do to get a guy like this in the door and on the field. And to your point, in an ideal world, yeah, he stays a couple of years. Like, he ends up getting drafted, like, day 2, day 3 guy. But we've seen some of these guys pop for Vandy. And, like, in the modern world, like I said, you got to be real with the guy and be like, hey, this is a great shot to show who you are. And we're going to see plenty of him. I love this pick.
Need to be able to get guys in the portal no matter where you're at. I'm sorry. You just have to. And Vandy seems to be embracing that more in the last couple of years. All right. That is the All Bang the Drum team. That is 16. Yeah, 16 guys that will be at the forefront of conversations that I have this year with friends who maybe just want to talk about dudes. And these are the dudes that I'll just roll out and, we'll defend them if they go through some early season struggles. And they are officially our guys. Anybody that you wanted to add to this conversation that came up and doing a little bit of background research on this?
I think we've already talked about a lot of my dudes. We had like the kind of the Hopium team that we just did. So I don't want to like get too redundant in my points. I think there's some really kind of like off the radar guys that I like a lot. Yeah.
I wonder if there's an All Bang the Drum coach that I should be that I should be circling the wagons on. Because I feel like and it would have to be an assistant, not a head coach in the SEC. But it's tough because there really wasn't much turnover last year. And gosh, I would almost go with like a Pete Golding. That'd probably get me a lot of crap.
But you see
Tim
what
Banks,
like
actually, Tim Banks.
That's what I was gonna say. I go Tim Banks there.
Yeah.
I was just talking about that with Ole Miss. Like now I'm thinking about Tim Banks. I'm like, yeah, this guy's kind of nasty, bro. I can't believe they've honestly been able to keep him that long.
Year 5 as a defensive coordinator.
With that offense, is what I'm saying. Like Tennessee's a great place, but like it's the thought of like, well, offense could be off the field in 17 seconds. Our guys are tired, so great for them for like keeping that relationship going.
Definitely. All right, let's kick it to Jake Dickert. Great to be able to chat with him. Someone that has been really busy with his transition going from Washington State to Wake Forest. I think people will see he's a really self-aware guy, and he's just one of those guys that I've really grown to respect, kind of watching his rise through the coaching ranks over the years, as he'll talk about. Very, very unique background given the places that he's been. So excited to see what he can do at Wake Forest. So here is Jake Dickert. I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Wake Forest coach Jake Dickert. Jake, I want to start with something that I ask every college football coach that's in year 1 at a new job. How many hours per night have you been sleeping?
I don't know. You can probably count that on one hand for sure. I know it's we got here in late December, right? So it was like coming into the late rounds of the draft. We had to kind of navigate our way into a bunch of different things, and it's just been full steam ahead ever since. So as much as required when you're married for 13 and have three young kids that are starting up schools and baseball and uploading a program. So it's been great.
Month of June, busiest month in the college football recruiting calendar, the way that it sets up now. Sleep is about the same as when you got started, or like how's that going?
Well, I don't think we've had a day off as a program since December 20th, so it's been a little bit crazy. June's been great. Finally, to official visit, everyone that we've been working on for so long. We had to sign 40 players since we got here. That's been a heavy lift. So to start on this 2026 class and to really lay the foundation of our future, Connor, that's what this is about. And, we'll get into Wake Forest a little bit, but it's a unique place, right? You got to want to be great at everything that you do and be able to finally showcase some of the best facilities and coaches in the country. It's been awesome and excited really for these next 2 weekends.
You took over someone in Dave Clawson who obviously had earned a ton of respect in the ACC. But I'm interested if there was like a day one change that you made. Gene Chizik used to tell me when he got to Iowa State, one of the things that he was most proud of fixing immediately was getting rid of the Ronald McDonald uniforms. It was just a cosmetic thing that he
Sure.
just says, you know what, I got to be able to fix this. Was there something either cosmetically or another area that you just said on day one? All right, we're just going to tweak things up, even if it's just where my office is located, something that you felt like you had to come in and kind of put your stamp on?
I don't know about putting a stamp on a program, but I know this. I've had a lot of great communication with Coach Clausen. I'm very, proud of what he's built in the foundation that's been handed over. And one of the biggest draws to Wake Forest was the stability of the head coaches, right? We've had three in 30 years, right? So to take over, what is, Connor, the winningest Power Four program in the state of North Carolina the last 25 years, people don't realize that, right? So the first thing we did was just inject Wake with a little energy. Like that's who we are. That's what we do. It's what we truly believe in. And, some people would say Wake Forest, and they would say, oh man, there's a lot of obstacles to winning. We say there's a lot of opportunity to winning. And I think our program needed that shot of life. And it's just a different viewpoint, a different vision. And I think our players through the transition have really grabbed a hold of that. And our senior leaders, Damon Claiborne, Nick Anderson, guys that have been all ACC players, they just really believed in the type of energy that we're bringing. So I just love where that's at. And that's probably the biggest change day one that we made.
How tough is that when you know that you have players that you have to sit down with and have those important conversations with to try and get them to not transfer and to know that, man, if you come across wrong in those interactions, you're going to be just like, wait, I just watched that guy leave when, so much of that is really going to come down to a conversation of their vibe of you.
Well, I think there's a challenge to that, Connor. The biggest challenge is when we got here December 20th, there wasn't a single person on this campus, right? So I had to do it just like we're doing right here. And you know me, I'm a people's person, right? The feeling, the vibe, the energy, like I like doing that face to face, but to do it on FaceTimes and Zooms, there was a whole nother level to the challenge that we acquired, coming so late. And then, having to wait 2.5, 3 weeks before the guys got back on campus. So it was a unique challenge. College football is different. We all know that. As soon as a coaching change, a lot of people are trying to come get your guys. I do wish, the NCAA would say, hey, there's a 10-day period after a coaching change where guys can't get in the portal. I think that would solve or help a lot of these coaches' transitions to at least have an opportunity to get a first point of contact with the players that are at your new place.
Because 30 days is what they're getting to be able to. They have 30 days after a coach takes over. That feels like it's too long, right?
Well, heck, I would take 5 days of no portal, and then yeah, they get 2 weeks to figure out if they're in and out. I just think you got to be able to make decisions on rosters and management and all kind of things. So we just did a good job of, making sure all those players that we wanted to come back were just really seeing our vision, right? How is it going to change? What's going to be different? The offense, the defense, special teams, culture wise. There's a big lift early as you're trying to upload a program.
Your time at Washington State, it kind of, you talk about modern college football, it kind of oddly personifies what the 2020s in college football have been, both with the situation that you took over, the circumstances surrounding that, and then the death of the Pac-12 as we knew it. As someone who spent, the previous 2 decades before that coaching at smaller schools and you're exposed to different types of things, what did you learn about modern college football in the last few years with all those different dynamics at play?
Well, I would say this, you said it pretty accurately. I mean, at Washington State, we were in the eye of the storm, right? To handle different types of adversities from every angle and every situation is what we've been dealing with the last 3 years. That's why I'm really proud of the success that we all had there. And I mean, as an athletic department, as a city, as a community, as a college, there was a lot of things that we had to navigate that were happening in real time. And I think the beauty of college sports is it's always changing. And if you can't adapt, if you can't change, if you can't, understand why introducing the money is positive, right? The transactional piece of our game, it's here. It's here to stay. And that's positive for a lot of families and people and a lot of future of 18 to 23-year-old young people. But I think as coaches, we have to stay transformational, right? We have the opportunity now more than ever to impact young people. And what I like to say is they need us more than ever, right? So the mentorship piece has been everything, right? But to sit there and being the head coach and the strongest voice of a university as you're going through something like that, I learned a lot through that, and just really excited about the type of success that we created there.
A lot of people were taken aback when you said, "Look, we're not buddies with Oregon State. We're kind of fighting our own battle." What was that like going through that, seeing all these other teams in the Pac-12 get kind of plucked here, plucked there, and then you're the last one standing with Oregon State, and you're like, "Wait a minute, we're supposed to be allies now?" Like, no, 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 we're all acting in our best interest. I thought it was really refreshing to hear someone say that because you are every program, every conference, they're all looking out for their best interests at the end of the day.
Well, I think it all started like when I was originally at Washington State, there was a Pac-12 Big Ten alliance. We all know that wasn't going to really be
Rest in
anything,
peace.
right? So, and then obviously, I was sitting on vacation in Wisconsin, where I'm from, when USC and UCLA, exited the conference, right? So it's one of those things. As we kept going, you have to have an individual university goal and objective, and you have to have a big picture objective. And we all know at Washington State, the big picture was trying to continue to get into one of these Power Four leagues. And, Oregon State, as much as we were together in this journey of a little bit of misery, at the end of the day, like I wanted to make sure everyone understood we're rivals. We want to win. There's never a time that I've played Oregon State and said, like, oh man, these guys are in it with us, right? We're competing. And maybe that's just a small town, old school nature that I was raised with.
Play them again this year too. I'm sure that'll be brought up once or twice if I had to guess.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be the first question in the press conference when we go into that week. So it's a tough place to play. Respect a lot of what they've done with their program, but we'll be ready.
I know your background is on the defensive side, but I'm just going to call you a quarterback guru because you've coached teams with Josh Allen, Cam Ward, and now someone that everybody in the SEC is talking about a lot, John Mateer. When you showed up at not Washington State, but Wyoming rather, and you see Josh Allen, it's your first job as an FBS assistant. And you realize every day as a safeties coach, you're going against a guy that's going to go on to do extraordinary things in the NFL. Did you have this realization of, wait a minute, is this just what quarterbacks at the FBS level look like?
No, you're right. It has been an interesting journey. I'm one of two FBS head coaches that have coached at every level, right? So when I
Wow.
finally made it to Wyoming and saw Josh Allen, the very first practice, he rips a field side comeback that is on like a laser beam shot. And I'm like, this guy's different, because you hear all the talk and the noise. What I've always appreciated, though, about all three of the guys you've talked about, got to see Josh Allen senior year. Cam Ward was just the number one overall pick. John McTeer, and you can quote me on this, Connor, is the best player in college football. I believe that. And he's going to go
Wow.
out there and prove it again. That the biggest thing with all three of those guys is the competitive nature and the approach of which they bring it to every day, and how they've gotten not just an offense, but a whole locker room of people to go out there and play for them. I got to see Josh do it. Cam did it in his own unique style with an incredible competitive flair. I saw a tweet the other day about the Titans asking the OC how Cam takes in the offensive plays while he's still talking smack to the defense. I've seen that a million times. That's how he operates. And John is just the ultra competitor, blue collar, small town, chip on the shoulder guy that continues to get better with every challenge. So it's been unique just to see those three guys create elite success for themselves, but also do it in their own specific and different ways.
You did something that's been copied, I think now several times in the transfer portal era, and I should have been giving you credit for it, and maybe until I find someone that did it before you, you're going to be the person that was kind of the first to usher this in. But you get the full-time job at Washington State and you hire Eric Morris from Incarnate Word, who was the head coach there, and his quarterback Cam Ward follows. You did the package deal with the play caller and a quarterback. Did you hire Morris knowing that you wanted Cam as well?
Eric Morris is an elite offensive mind. It was well understood that he had probably the best player in the portal. But I knew as the conversations came up, I still wanted to have a long-term plan on offense. And it just happened to be that he also had one of the best players, right? So Eric's gone on to be a, fantastic group of five coach, and he'll be at this level really soon. So it ended up being a home run in both scenarios, if I'm being honest. And Eric is still a great friend, and we talk a lot and share stories about head coaching and this journey. So I hope, though, as much as it worked out for us at Washington State, that Eric has taken a lot about our program and how we see things a little bit different lens because I'm a defensive head coach, right? So it worked out well, but obviously it stung us on the back end too, right, with the Oklahoma deal. And I think that's part of today's college football where sometimes you hire people that can bring some players with them. And I think that's a unique and different challenge that we're all dealing with.
Let's talk about that move that they made to Oklahoma because obviously you just gave John Mateer a whole lot of high praise, but the package deal of John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle at Oklahoma could define Brent Venables' time in Norman. Obviously, those guys did great things with you last year. I am admittedly someone who like that raised my eyebrows to hear you say that. I'm more of a skeptic just because I'm kind of waiting and seeing how it's going to look with playing against the SEC defensive lines with the way that he likes to extend plays and stuff like that. Can you convert me as someone who's more of a John Mateer skeptic into a believer?
Well, I would say the same thing probably about Cam Ward if we talked this time last year. And
True.
you're talking about his fumbles and how is he going to run around and create his escapability and make big plays. I think that worked out, Connor, pretty well, right? So John's going to keep evolving as well, right? I believe, one of the biggest things he would admit that he's got to work on his progression passing, right? And what he does and how he sees defenses. Remember, he was just a redshirt sophomore as he was going through that process. He's one of the best athletes. I believe that. And I've always comped him to Bo Nix. I always have.
Mm.
And Bo Nix, when he was at Auburn, transformed his game when he went to Oregon, right? So that's what I think you're going to see in the next iteration of John. And, it's just cool to be part of his journey, right? We were in late January, Connor, when we offered John Mateer. He was going to go, I believe, to Central Arkansas, and he had an OV to New Mexico. And we saw skills and traits that have been developed beyond measure. But when I knew John Mateer was going to be successful, it was the first practice of fall camp. I'm leaving at 10 o'clock. The lights are out in the stadium, and there's this player down there going through the plays for tomorrow's script, and it was John Mateer. Those are the type of things that nobody will see that's going to lead to all his success this season.
And that's an interesting comp because I've been searching for one and trying not to be lazy with it because I think everybody now in this day and age thinks guys who take chances who can also run really well. Well, that's just Josh Allen. And it's interesting given your background with Josh Allen to not necessarily go in that direction. What's the biggest thing that he needs to be able to improve? Is it just that willingness to take chances and kind of know the thing that Bo Nix eventually knew by the time he was done in Oregon of, look, man, they're going to dial up some high percentage plays for you, and if you can trust that, you're going to be much better off.
Well, I think there's a play style that my biggest thing that I've always done with quarterbacks, and especially, having two, I believe, first rounders, is that they have to play to themselves, right? Don't put them in a box, right? They have the greatest keys to the car on game day, not me as the head coach, right? So I know how we approached it and how we prepared, right? But I think at the end of the day, I know that John's going to continue to maximize himself because of the things no one else sees. And I think those are the biggest things of why he can learn how to play certain and unique and different ways. So that's what I'm anticipating. I know they have a tough schedule, just focused on what we need to do here at Wake Forest too, because I think we got a couple good quarterbacks that can really fit into that next big time quarterback mold, right? And I do believe in Robbie Ashford, and I will say this, as good as John was athletically, I think Robbie's the best athletic quarterback that I've been around. And Deshaun Purdy, who was a starter last year at the University of Charlotte, 6'5", 225, and is the first passer since, yes, Josh Allen, that I've seen this type of raw arm. So I'm excited about the guys that we've collected here too at Wake to be hopefully a conversation a year from now. We're talking about those guys.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you make that comp because those of us who have been watching the SEC for a while have seen a lot of Robbie Ashford, and we've seen kind of him have those moments where like, dang, the athleticism is there, and then just hasn't been able to put it all together and kind of be that starter for you. Ideally, would you like to have a situation where it's a true quarterback competition? Do you want to have it figured out early in fall camp where you're just giving one guy the vast majority of those reps with the ones? Like how does an ideal quarterback battle work, especially when you need to figure out, which guy at very different stages of their careers is capable of running the type of offense you want to run?
I think the best part, Connor, is we actually were just went through it. We didn't know John was going to be the starter until probably week 2 of fall camp. And I thought that was a unique and different blend. And we'll do the same thing here. We probably won't even announce a guy, until 30 minutes before the game. And don't be surprised if we play both. I think they have a unique and different skill set from a defensive lens that have two different, completely different ways that you have to, attack and defend these guys. So I believe that's a great thing that we have that type of versatility. But the competition, I think what I learned last year going through it at Washington State is when you have a competitive battle going on at quarterback, it raises the level of your whole organization because they're like, this position is being settled right now. Wide receiver, O-line, tailback. I mean, it's amazing what that brings to everybody else. And the best part of what we have here, Connor, that not a lot of people have in the country is the ability for that one guy, whoever it is that runs out there, to be in the huddle with Damon Claiborne, right? Who I think is a Doak Walker award guy that probably isn't talked about enough in the country, that he's one of the best tailbacks out there, and we're going to utilize his skill sets as much as possible to take pressure off the quarterback.
You've got 35 incoming transfers. You had 27 outgoing transfers, which, look, we hear those numbers in 2007 and we're like, what the world just happened at a program? In the year 2025, it's a lot more standard. You've got a ton of roster turnover, as most do in your position. You have a general manager in Rob Schlager that you brought with you from Washington State. How difficult would this job be in today's college football without a general manager?
I wouldn't be able to do it. I
Yeah.
just think it's changed so much that if you don't have we don't even call it recruiting, a player acquisition department, that it wouldn't really be possible. And the reason I say I wouldn't be able to do it because my relationship with Rob Schlager, there's more trust involved in that. This isn't some 1 year working relationship. He was a GA for me back at the University of Wyoming in 2017. He wanted to cut his teeth in coaching. He did that. I brought him with me to Washington State. He was one of the first GMs in the country in 2022 because we saw this thing, coming down the line, and our analytically driven approach, his biomechanics and metrics and measuring femur lengths and all the things that we do, it's just an amazing partnership. And we look forward to kind of building special teams here at Wake Forest, just the way we did at Washington State. But one of the biggest reasons we're here, Connor, because we now can recruit, build relationships, and retain these guys through resources, right? Wake Forest is committed to being great, and I look forward to kind of working with Rob for years to come before eventually I got to send him to where he's destined to be in the NFL.
Do you get final call on roster decisions like that? Like, how does that dynamic work when you have a GM that he's the one that's putting in a lot of that legwork? But I imagine there is a certain trust level that has to come where like he sends you a guy and says, look, I saw this guy at the FCS level. I know he can come here, play day one. Do you get that decision to be able to make, or do you say, look, man, if he's your guy, I'm going to trust you, and then we'll kind of figure out what it looks like once he gets here?
Yeah, I think there's a blend. There's never too much, time in the day to not sit down and watch who's going to be coming into your program, right? So we final stamp really everything together. We do a good job, and we have a distinct process and how we go about doing that, even in the chaos of portal season and recruiting and transfers and spring ball going on while we need to acquire talent. We do a good job of making sure we always carve out and very succinct in how we do it, how we need to then recruit them and attack it. And I think that's part of just kind of our whole process.
Last one for you before we get to some rapid fire here. I always say I don't judge year one coaches. I don't like to just because I think some of the roster that you inherit is, more indicative of what the previous staff did. And there's just a lot of different things that you take on that you might not even know you're taking on when you get the job. Is that an outdated take to say that? Like, should we in the media be judging year one coaches, or if we are, what should we be judging them by?
If I'm being honest with you, Connor, like we don't go by what everyone else thinks. We believe in the roster of what we put together, and I'm not an excuses guy. I'm not. I'm not saying, oh, those were Coach Clausen's guys. These are our guys. This is what we're doing. My obligation to the seniors on this football team is to make sure that we're not just in like win now mode, we're in win forever mode. That's what we want to do. Right? I've worked my life from Division III to coach up every level of college football to be the head coach at Wake Forest. We're going to do things right. But I owe it to those seniors to say, let's go get it right now. And I believe in this football team. I believe in what we can accomplish together. One of the other big things we changed here is that there's a million ways to win a football game. The only thing our team needs to do is to find one of those ways. And let's go out there and execute that thing in that moment that gives us that edge. And then we just got to find a way to win. And that could be offense, defense, special teams, going for it every fourth down, onside kicking every play. I don't know what it is, but we're going to find that path to victory because our guys right now are living in the dark. They are there, they're going through our process, and everyone in the light is just talking about that we can't do anything. There's a strong belief in this football team of what we're doing together, and I'm excited about taking that field August 29th.
I forgot to ask you who the other coach was that's coached every single level of football. Is it Caleb DeBoer?
I think it's Dave Aranda. I think it's Dave Aranda.
Oh, good
I think
call.
Caitlin skipped Division III.
That's right. That's right. Coached in a
NAI,
lot of the same
they
areas
won
that
a
you
bunch of
did.
NAIA championships.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Yeah, I would have kicked myself and then I would have spent, an hour researching that to find that exact stat. So I appreciate that.
Dave Rand's a big Cal Lou guy. So shout out to all the D3 schools out there. Wisconsin, Stevens Point. That's where I'm from.
Love it. Love it. This has been great. I want to get you out of here with some rapid fire. Just 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
All right. You're a Wisconsin native. What is your Culver's order?
Oh, that's a double deluxe value basket. Sub out the fries for the cheese curds. That's a loud one. And you better get a scoop of the day. I mean, that's standard.
Scoop of the day, or if you're going for a solo trip, what's your go-to concrete order?
Oh man, I'm a little bit different. I'm gonna go just normal kind of Oreos with some cheesecake pieces, right? So I'm a mix there a little bit.
That's a good mix. People forget you get two. That's the
Right.
key
That's
there
right.
at Culver's.
That's right.
Yeah. It's your first time coaching in the South. Have you had a welcome to the South moment yet?
Well, not really. The humidity that everyone talks about hasn't arrived yet in North Carolina. It's kind of been a little bit Pacific Northwest the last couple of years. I just haven't found my place of barbecue yet. I'm trying to navigate the vinegar sauce from the barbecue sauce I was raised on, so I'm still working through that.
You'll have plenty of opportunities, if I had to guess. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
How many cups of coffee per day do you drink?
I'm a 2 cups a day guy, and a Diet Coke in the afternoon is standard. So a little bit of tea in there. So we're always kind of mixing and matching.
That's not bad. I asked Manny Diaz had a very similar answer to that. I'm always expecting like 8 or 9 or something like that. But you probably wouldn't be able to do this job if you were too amped up like that, right?
I think you got to try to be a little steadier in that. I have switched to like Americanos now. Right.
Okay.
So look out. That's the next iteration of my coffee journey.
What frustrates you most about the way media covers college football?
Oh, I don't know if anything really frustrates me. I just want them to tell the stories of the people. Right. I think it is still about the person over the player, and the more that we can really stay focused on that, I just hope and encourage everyone really understands because there's amazing stories all over college football. Falili Fa'amui at our place is one of them. He came to us at Washington State 210 pounds off of America Samoa, and he has grown himself into a 325-pound kick-ass offensive lineman. Like it's just all those type of things are what makes college football incredibly special. And let's not lose that as we kind of go into the future of this game.
14,000 calories a day at least to gain that kind of weight.
That and DNA, I think, has served him very well.
This is true. All right, last one for you. Probably most important question that you're going to get this entire offseason. Have you gotten to ride on the Demon Deacons motorcycle yet?
You know what? I think there was a story about someone a couple of years ago, they let do it and dumped it. So they're very protective about it right now. I do want to maybe get like my motorcycle's license so I can prove that I can do it because I think there's an opportunity for me like to take it through the quad or something after a big win. Right. So we'll work our way towards that. But I've had an opportunity to stand behind it, but they're a little leery on just kind of cutting it loose to me.
That's actually really fair. If one person falls off, that's like 20 years worth of we're the liability. We can't ever head coach getting injured unless he's got, the full motorcycle license and all that stuff. So take care of that first, and then, the big ride off into after a nice win, that'll come.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Jake, really appreciate the time, man. Best of luck with everything that you've got going on in year one and beyond.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. It means a lot to us. Go Deeks.
All right, well, let's close with some lad of the week. Do you want to start? You want me to go?
Oh, you got it, man. I think there's a clear one this week.
Clear one, Gage Wood. All-time great baseball name, by the way. Gage Wood. I mean, goodness gracious. Maybe the best game ever in college baseball history that's been pitched. What he did for Arkansas in elimination game, no-hitter. First no-hitter since the Dwight D. Eisenhower administration in Omaha. 19 strikeouts. I mean, not to make this all about the teams that I root for. Essentially the Kerry Wood game.
Goodness, man. Yeah, and in college too. Poor
Same
Murray
name
State.
too? We sure there's not a relation there?
He got the wood power in him.
Yeah. Just unreal. Unreal. The amount of people, including my guy Ben McDonald, John Neighbors, Phil Elson, the amount of people who just said, I've just never seen anything that dominant before. To do it on that stage, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I love it too. One of my favorite things about that Kerry Wood game was the movement on the breaking ball late in the game. Gage Wood, the movement on his breaking ball late in that game, stupid. Absolutely stupid. Mad at himself after for hitting that guy in the 8th inning. The only thing that separated him from a perfect game.
And that's crazy. Yeah. Like, oh man, these are just different species, man. I love college baseball so much because you really just never know what you're going to get. Like you can get 19 Ks, you can get a super wild offensive goofy game. Yeah. And like he just had it that day, man.
The stuff of legend. And I don't know if that is the beginning of a run for Arkansas to finally get that College World Series title. They're second behind FSU with the most appearances without a national title. Arkansas fans don't need me to remind them of that, but you just kind of wonder when stuff like that starts happening. You're just like, we about to see something special here. Very difficult to get out of the losers bracket, obviously, after losing that game to LSU. But Gage Wood, man, dude, absolute legend to pull off something like that.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. Like I said, I have a lot of respect for this Arkansas team. I really do. I mean, there's probably not a team that I've enjoyed watching more that is I guess, direct competitor to my team. But they're just a group of really cool dudes, and I find myself rooting for them, and which is terrible because they're one of the only teams that I feel like could really like give LSU a run for their money. They already have. But yeah, just seemed like a really solid group of guys that like I feel like I just individually like all of them, and Gage Wood kind of like chief among them. So yeah, I mean that's gonna live on forever, no matter what happens in Omaha.
How many hits would LSU have had against Gage Wood?
You know what? The good news is we'll never know.
Maybe. Never say never.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. On that day, though, we wouldn't have known on that day. Yeah.
True. How many hits would LSU have had on that very specific day? Wherein, to say that Murray State was befuddled would be the understatement of the century.
Befuddled, yes. I'm going to change gears a little bit, talk about Kalen Saunders on the Saints. This week he is hosting an all-inclusive football camp, which I think is super cool. He is famously the brother of a Taylor Swift backup dancer, which I think is pretty cool. And, I think the image of football has been very kind of homogenous over the years. And I think over the last like 20 or so years, we've seen players like express more non-commodified creativity, like where guys really just kind of like go into like show more of who they are without the financial incentive. It's not like an ad campaign. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. I'm not saying guys don't do stuff for money, but where it comes to, guys have the ability and have a platform through social media to make a change. And this is basically a football camp that is open to, boys, girls, women, LGBTQ, like the entire community. And I think that's super cool. And I think that the NFL is, I know like we're not in a great political climate, right? But I think that everyone's ability to participate in something is universally accepted. And I don't know if you've heard Carl Nassib's story about like kind of super funny story, not worth repeating here, but like I think
he said on the pivot with Ryan Clark. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that like the culture around football is changing from a place that, guys kind of have to be within themselves for fear of being shamed just overall, right? Like where a locker room is kind of seen as a place that you got to be one way. I think that there have been a lot of guys who have kind of brought that to the forefront. So I think it's super cool. No matter what you believe, I think that inclusivity is super important. And to at least say, hey, you're welcome if you want to come out, I think is something that's what America's all about.
Lauren and I have been discussing, let me rephrase that. I've been talking at Lauren about how the best sport for Claire to be able to play is flag football.
Mm-hmm.
And it checks so many boxes, so many boxes. And there are a lot of leagues around here. There are so many more that are available that when I was a kid, I used to play flag football all the time, like some semi-organized Saturday morning type deals and stuff like that, and played in college. And not a lot of opportunities for girls to be able to play flag football. And now they have just all sorts of leagues that are created like that, because why wouldn't you? And maybe Claire and I will have to work on flag grabbing and how you can be elusive between the tackles. That's going to be a Hester conversation, though, because Hester's kids just dominate flag football. I can't imagine showing up and seeing one of Hester's kids. The Instagram highlights are ridiculous. They're going to have an entire huddle video ready to go by the time they're all in high school. I mean, it's just going to be insane. But Claire playing flag football one day, I'm not saying I'm going to push her in that direction, but it would have my full support and my full blessing in every single way, because the boxes that checks, man. You don't have to worry about the contact element of it too. Like, just saying.
I think that's super cool and super important. And I love that perspective as a girl dad too, right? Because like, hey, Claire gets involved in something like this now. Hey, odds are she's not going to play in the NFL, but she could be a football executive, right? And that's how this stuff gets started, where it's like, hey, this is a game where we're welcoming everyone. And it truly is capitalism, right? Where it's like we get the best ideas. We don't want to push people away. And working in women's sports, I've heard so many times, the amount of times that, girls are pushed away from sports because they're told to do other things in society or whatever. So yeah, I think getting the best talent pool for football is awesome.
We can still work on the long snapping. We're not putting that dream to bed. That's still very much going to be in play. Class of 2041 or 2042, depending on when the cutoff is with her May birthday. We'll have to wait and see what that looks like, a decade or so from now. But
I see why you're talking about the Illinois guys. You're trying to get Brett Bielema on your side so you can get the early Scully. I see. Okay.
No. What makes you think Illinois?
Yeah, we got bigger dreams. We're going SEC, buddy.
Buddy, come on. What do you think I'm doing all this for? What do you think I do this job for?
Get the inroads, yeah.
It's not to put a roof over our heads. It's so that my future, her future could be taken care of, and I make enough connections to where the preferred walk on, whatever you want to call it. Let's just make it happen. Role in football, special assistant to the head coach. Plenty of positions available, especially now that the analyst thing's been blown out of the water. We'll find something.
Exactly.
That's a pod. Hopefully nobody was overwhelmed with the early drop. We'll be back on our relatively normal schedule, recording Wednesday next week, trying to get those pods out before people go home for work on Wednesday afternoon. That's been kind of the plan. I know I said Thursday morning was kind of going to be the off-season vibe for us, but yes, we'll be traveling and doing a lot of different things over the course of the next week. So please, if you have not give us a 5-star review. Please do that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of Started Down South podcast. Use that promo code on Dabble, SDS2, $25 in bonus cash, no deposit required. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Set Down South, at TJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.